So today I wanted to make a quick video talking about a new process that I use for upgrading Ember apps and add-ons. We talked about it on the podcast recently. I used it to upgrade Ember Maps codebase, and just this morning I was upgrading Mirage, and the same process works everywhere. I think it's super valuable and I want to tell everyone about it, so I'm just going to walk you through what this process looks like at a high level so you can start using it on your own apps and add-ons. Now the basic process looks like this, and it's really the same for either an app or an add-on. The first step is to upgrade forwards compatible packages. So this is going to be one shot. We're going to upgrade everything that can be upgraded according to Ember without any breaking changes. And that doesn't mean there will never be a breaking change, but just that this is safe enough for us to do in one shot because the chances are that we're not going to have any breaking changes. The next step is to upgrade third-party dependencies and add-ons one at a time. And when we get to this step, I'll explain why. And then the third step is to actually upgrade Ember, Ember Cli, and all of the first-party add-ons that come with a new app or add-on. And we're going to do that using Ember Cli update. So first, to upgrade all the forwards compatible packages, we're going to do that using Yarn. And I use Yarn for my projects, but the same idea will apply if you use npm. Now, the current version of Ember Map is updated, but I've checked out an old commit so I can show you the process. And we'll be referring to this PR here, which is the actual PR that we used in Ember Map frontend during the upgrade. So you can see here the very first commit in this PR says upgrade forwards compatible packages. Now the way we're going to do this is with this really cool command, yarn upgrade-interactive-latest. And what this is going to do is going to show us all of the packages in our project, show us what the current version is, and show us what the desired version is based on the latest tag in npm. And we can use J and K here to just scroll through this list. We can see our dependencies and our dev dependencies. So this is really cool that this gives us this list here just very conveniently so we can see all of the versions. And we also have a link to the repositories. We can just command click this and get right to the repo. So you'll notice that this is color coded, and if a package is green, it means that according to Ember, the upgrade is forwards compatible. So in this case, chai HTTP, it currently sits at 4.2.0 and the desired tag is 4.2.1. And that's a Ember compatible upgrade. That upgrade from the perspective of Ember doesn't require us to change any of our code. And you can see right here that this package is green, which is indicating that this is basically okay for us to upgrade, should be safe. Again, things aren't perfect, but that's the idea. So we can actually look through this list and just go ahead and hit space on all of these green packages because we just know, according to Ember, that nothing should break from these things. Now, you'll also see we have yellow packages. Yellow packages are minor version bumps based on Ember. So in Ember, a minor version is when this middle number changes. So in this case, we're going from 5.5.0 to 5.6.3. That indicates there's some new feature available. But if the package is behaving according to Ember, then there shouldn't be any breaking changes. So yellow should actually also be okay for us to bump based on the spec, and we shouldn't have to actually change any of our own code if we make that bump. So what I'm going to do is also select all of these yellow packages. Again, I'm just using J and K here and space. So we see some Ember add-ons in here. But again, these are minor versions that should be forwards compatible. And there we go. We have all of our forwards compatible packages selected. So now if I hit enter, Yarn is actually going to go ahead and bump those versions in our package.json. It's going to refetch them all, and that's going to give us a new version of the project with a new set of dependencies. And if we come take a look at Git right here in Addon, and we were to look at the changes in package.json, we can see all those versions have been bumped actually in package.json, and so we've changed a lot of packages here. So at this point, the next step would be to run our test suite and make sure everything passes. Now, in the case of Ember Map, we can look at the actual commit I ended up with and see that in addition to the package.json changes and the changes to the yarn lock file, There's only one other change I needed to make, which was to dependency lint, and this was related to ensuring that there's only one version of Ember Inflector that ends up in our dependency graph. But as you can see, I didn't have to change any other file in our entire code base, and once I committed that, if you come back here and look at these commits, you can see that this has a green check next to it, which means when I push this commit up and our CI server ran our test suite, everything passed. So right away I was able to knock out this much of an upgrade in one commit very quickly. And again, that was just using that yarn upgrade interactive with the latest flag and just picking out the packages that were forwards compatible. So again, that is really the first step. And at this point, I would commit this. So we can go ahead and do that just for the sake of the video with a message like upgrade forwards compatible packages. So that's step one. The next step is to go through and upgrade our third-party dependencies and add-ons one at a time. Now before I use this process, I would upgrade things kind of all at once. I might try to upgrade Ember and all of the first-party packages, and then start running my test suite and hit errors, and then realize, maybe I need to upgrade Liquid Fire, and so I would go find the right version of that, upgrade that, try everything again, hit a new test failure, and so on. This was really slow, and it was also kind of confusing and made me feel like I didn't really know what the next step was. If we do things one at a time, we're changing the least amount in between commits. So when something goes wrong, we have a really good idea of what it is we're changing, and so we can identify what the problem is. So this process is much more straightforward. There's times where it was going to feel kind of routine, like it might take a little bit longer, but that's okay. In the end, it saves you time, I promise. So to do this, we're going to go back to our command line, and we're going to run that command again, yarn upgrade interactive with the latest flag. And now all we see are these red packages, which means there's potentially breaking changes. Most of these are not going to have breaking changes, actually, for our purposes, but it just means we need to be a little bit more careful when we upgrade these. Now, I want to make sure that we focus on the third-party add-ons and third-party dependencies first, and skip over the first-party dependencies. And what I mean by that is Ember Cli is a first-party dependency. It comes from the official Ember project. When you create a new Ember app, you're going to get Ember Cli. So we're going to put off all of the first-party packages related to Ember and Ember Cli until the end. So that'll be things like Ember Cli, Ember Cli Babel, dependency checker. These are things that came by default and we didn't install out of the box. Now there's an easy way to see which packages these are, and there's a repo called Ember new output. So I use this all the time when I'm doing upgrades. This is a repository that just shows us a snapshot of a clean Ember app at specific versions. So what we're going to do is come to our app, open up package.json. We're going to see that we're currently on 2.17. So if I want to see what the first party dependencies are of an Ember 2.17 app, I'm going to use this repo, go to tags, type 2.17. So I'll grab 2.17.2. And here we go. This is going to show us everything that you would get if you typed Ember new my app from Ember Cli version 2.17. So we can look at the package.json, and right here we have a list of all the first party dependencies. So these are things that we don't really control. From my perspective, these are kind of Ember's responsibility, and I'm going to wait and upgrade these all at once at the end when I actually upgrade Ember. But in the meantime, I'm going to upgrade the third-party add-ons, and the reason for this is because third-party add-ons in the Ember ecosystem are very good at backwards compatibility. So I work on Ember Cli Mirage, for example. It's much more likely that a current version of Ember Cli Mirage will work with an old version of Ember than it is an old version of Ember Cli Mirage will work with some newer version of Ember or Ember Cli. And this is exactly why, for example, we would upgrade Ember Cli Mirage first, because we're on 2.17, but that's fine. The future versions of Mirage and Liquid Fire and Ember Concurrency they're all going to be able to work with a 2.17 app. So this is exactly the process we're going to take, and we're just going to use this list of first-party dependencies to ignore these as we go through this yarn upgrade. So asset rev was in that list. So asset rev is a first-party dependency. We're just going to skip it. Now broccoli merge trees is not in this list. We don't see it in this list right here. And if I come to my project and I search broccoli merge trees, well, in this case, I actually only see broccoli merge trees in my package.json file and my yarn.log file. So this probably means at some point we installed this dependency and maybe we're using it in our Ember Cli build file or some in-repo add-on, just messing around with some broccoli code, but it actually seems like we don't use it anymore. So this is the easiest upgrade at all. We just get to come to package.json, delete this line, save it, and we're gonna go back and we're gonna exit this because we're not gonna upgrade this anymore. I'm just gonna Command C this, run yarn to regenerate our lock file, and then I'm going to be able to just commit this and say remove unused broccoli merge trees. And so again, as part of this upgrade, we see we have two commits. One is upgrade for its compatible packages, and the second is just removing this unused package. So at this point, I can again push this up to GitHub, have my CI run, and just know that after each one of these steps, we're gonna have a green test suite. And the great thing about this is that sometimes upgrades can take a long time, or you can get stuck with some hairy part of the upgrade that, some API change and now you're gonna need to adapt part of your code base. By using this method, if we ever get stuck and need to get pulled back into future work, we can actually just commit what we've done so far because we're doing the work of the upgrade and we're able to kind of short circuit and just commit what we have and come back to this later. So if we come and look at the actual commits that I ended up doing as part of our upgrade, you can see this. You can see this first for its compatible packages commit, and then you can just see a bunch of individual commits where maybe we're upgrading one dependency or we're removing an unused dependency. And again, at any time we could have just committed this and we would have been good to go. So let's just do one more of these that we actually do use. So now that we're done with that, we're going to rerun this upgrade interactive command again. So broccoli stew is the next in our list, and we can come look at Ember new output. We don't see it here, so we know that's something that we installed. We can come and search for broccoli stew, and again we don't see it, so we would do the same thing. We would remove this and then commit that. But just to get to another example here, let's look at Ember Ajax. And we see that is a first-party add-on, so we're going to skip that. Ember Cli, Ember Cli Babel. Those are both included in the default blueprint. And Ember Cli Clipboard is kind of the first add-on that we get to that's a third-party add-on, so this is our responsibility. And we want to update this again at this point. So we're going to go ahead and, before we just bump this to the latest version, we're going to open up the README here. And we know we're going from 0.9 to 0.11. So now we're going to look for something that's going to help us make sure we can upgrade. Now we could just bump this, run our test suite, and if we're confident in our test suite, we can go ahead and commit that. But I still usually like to come and look at either a change log if an add-on has it, or come to their releases and try to find out basically what's changed between 0.9 and 0.11. So we can see here that this added support for a new testing API. This does some upgrades. And so it seems like this is mostly forwards compatible. And so this is probably going to be safe to go ahead and bump, run our test suite, push it up to GitHub, and then commit that in there. Now, I will point out here that this is going from 0.9 to 0.11. And from the perspective of Semver, since we're on 0. Since the first major version is 0, we basically have to treat this as a breaking change, even though it's just a second number that's changing. So a lot of times you'll find packages that start with 0 and they're bumping the second version. They're actually not breaking anything, but this will show up as red in this list. And again, that's because when that first value is 0, you have to treat that second number as a breaking change. So that's basically how it goes with the third-party apps. And again, you can see here from the actual PR that I ended up merging into Ember Map, most of these were just upgrading dependencies. And sometimes the upgrade would involve changing a little bit of the API. So in this case, we're bumping Ember Cli head from 0.3 and 0.4. And this was related to page title as well. These two things were related. So this commit actually has these two things both going up. And you can see here there was a little bit of code to change in a page info component and in our application template. So not every commit is only going to be touching package.json and your yarn lock file, right? There's going to be times where you actually have to accommodate the new APIs or the breaking changes that occurred. But this is still a very small commit, and importantly, every one of these commits is able to be deployed, and so you don't have to block all progress on the main app just because you're doing an upgrade. So once you get through all of your third-party dependencies and add-ons, you have a passing test suite. You're on the old version of Ember and Ember Cli, but everything else is up to date. So again, at this point, you could actually merge this PR. I did this on a different project and just updated all the forwards compatible and third-party dependencies. And I didn't even have time to do Ember or Ember Cli right then. And I came back about a month later and I just focused on this step 3. So that's perfectly valid as well. So step 3 is to upgrade Ember Cli using Ember Cli Update. Now, if you haven't heard of this, this is one of my favorite projects that's come out in the Ember ecosystem in the last few years. And this is from Kelly Selden. This makes upgrading your Ember apps and add-ons much, much easier. So I usually like to use this as a global executable. And the way this looks like is this. So let's say we had everything up to date and we were ready to upgrade Ember Cli. We can make sure we have Ember Cli Update installed with yarn global add Ember Cli Update. And this is going to give us a command, Ember Cli Update, that we can run from the root of our project. Now, if we look at this README, we can see that you can just type this to go to the latest version, or you can pass this --2 command to get to a specific version. So what I like to do is go to LTS versions. I like to jump from one LTS version to the next, just again because that minimizes the amount that's changing between versions across all these dependencies and just makes my job a little bit easier. So what I would do in this case is pop open my package.json and have a look and see that we're at 217. So the next kind of LTS version was 218. So what I would do is come here and run Ember Cli Update --2 2.18. And this is going to run some code and upgrade some files. And we can come here and look at Git and see that we have some conflicts. And this is where you actually update the generated files that come with Ember and make sure that you get the new pieces while still respecting the things that you've changed since you created your app. So in this case, it looks like we have some new changes here to this ESLint file, but we also have our own. So we would go through, and I'm just going to quickly do this. Let's say theirs and ours, but we would make sure that we've captured all the rules here. And in that case, I actually need to do something like, I want my rules, and then now we have these new overrides. So however you're used to resolving conflicts, that's what you would do next. We could save this, we could stage it, and we could move on to the next thing. And just to show you, let's just go ahead and take theirs for each one of these. So I can show you kind of the next step after this. So now that we have no conflicts, I'll just create a commit called update Ember Cli to 2.18. And then often what I have to do here is just actually run this command again. And if everything worked the first time, this is what we'll see. So we'll see that the tags matched and that first upgrade got us done. But sometimes you just kind of have to run it twice to get all the changes. But anyways, now that we're done with that, we can look at our package.json and see that we're actually on Ember Cli 2.18. And if I come to the terminal and do a diff with the previous commit, we can see everything that Ember Cli Update did for us. So it updated some files here, but then if we come down to package.json, we can see that we've bumped Ember Cli, we've bumped Ember Source, and in this case, since we're going from 217 to 218, not many of these packages have changed. So at this point, we're going to run our test suite, and there might be some things to fix, and we can take these one at a time. If I switch back over to Ember Maps PR, you can see right down here is where I actually got to this upgrade step, and we can just take a peek at this actual commit and see what really changed. So is that ESLint file, the environment config, and some packages here. And then there were some new linting errors introduced by some of those changes, and so I fixed those. In particular, this one was you can no longer pass these arrays to properties like this, So we use object.freeze to kind of get us out of that. But this is the kind of thing that's going to change. As Ember's APIs change and you move to new versions of Ember and Ember Cli, you're going to have to adapt your code base to follow those new conventions. So sometimes there's some work to do here, but again, you've minimized what changes from version to version. So you just know, it's very clear looking at your test suite, looking at new deprecation warnings from the new versions of Ember and its first party dependencies, what you need to do in your app to actually get that upgrade done. And then if we look here, we see some more commits where I'm fixing the test suite. And then I actually just took this opportunity to improve some patterns that were in our app, remove some old add-ons that do things a little bit differently, and just in general clean up some code debt. But thinking about those 3 steps, this PR should be mergeable after this first commit of forwards compatible packages. And then after each one of these commits, talking about a third-party add-on, you should be able to merge it and actually go ahead and deploy that app. So the biggest risk in this entire upgrade process is when you actually bump Ember, Ember Cli, and all of those first-party dependencies. You can see there's usually some work that I split up across different commits here to get my test suite passing again. But once you do, you've upgraded Ember and Ember Cli, and you can then go ahead and repeat the same process for the next LTS. So in our case, I waited 2 months or so to come back to get us from 2.18 to 3.4, and I just repeated this whole thing again. I just first bumped the forwards compatible packages. There's a few packages that had changed. I then looked at any third-party add-ons that needed to be updated again, and then I ran Ember Cli update and went from 2.18 to 3.4. And it was surprising how easy it was. The biggest change in 3 was the new testing API. I didn't have to change it because the old testing API actually still works in 3x, but I went ahead and took that opportunity to do that. And like I said in the beginning, this exact same process works for add-ons. So I was just upgrading Mirage this morning, and upgrading the forwards compatible packages first works. All of the third-party add-ons and dependencies I use in Mirage work with the older version of Ember and Ember Cli. And then the Ember Cli update tool works for add-ons. So it actually looks at what a new generated add-on would look like in 3.4 and compares it to what Mirage looks like now. There's a different repo you need to use called Ember Add-on Output. And you can use this for exactly the same purpose as we used Ember New Output for. I can come here, search for tags 2.18, and I can see exactly which packages were included by default and thus which ones I should skip during that second phase of the upgrade. So this is my new process for upgrading. I'm definitely going to use this from here on out. I hope you found that helpful, and good luck in your next upgrade.